Animation is made for children. Animation should not be taken seriously. Animation is not worth as much as live-action media. Emotions cannot be shown as well using animation. Animation is a genre. These are all lies. Lies that have held control of Hollywood, award ceremonies, and the minds of many people in the general public for decades now. So many people unfairly discredit animation as something to be enjoyed by children and endured by adults. Animation is not this, it is so much more. Sadly, a lot of people in our world disregard animation as a medium. But why is this? Well, to start, some assume that a piece of media being animated automatically means it is made for children. Others may dislike the way it looks, claiming that the stereotypical bright colours and vibrant visuals are too distracting for them. My aim is to deconstruct both of these arguments. So first, let's take a look at those that believe animation is for children. Throughout recent decades, animation and children's entertainment has stereotypically gone hand in hand. Whether these are films or cartoon shows, many people associate any style of animation with something that has been made for kids. However, this association does not go back to the origins of animation. According to many film historians, Fantasmagorie by Emile Cole is the first animated film ever made. Cole, however, did not design his work with a young audience in mind. He just set out to create something creative and fluid that would stun the senses. So this begs the question, why do so many people associate animation with children? Is it due to the visual vibrancy of a lot of animation, or maybe to do with the usual light-hearted appearance? If so, what does it say about our society that just because something is bright or happy, it immediately has to be for children? Are we, as a whole, not allowed to enjoy something that is not dismal? After all, if live-action comedy films aren't judged, why are typically light-hearted cartoons frowned upon by so many adults, critics, and award shows? This also links to the major criticisms I see by ignorant viewers about animation. The bright colours are too distracting when watching a film, or I want my films to be realistic. These animated characters can't show as much emotion as a real actor. So many people wrongfully assume that animated characters are unable to showcase how they are feeling, either through facial expressions, movement, or the performance of the voice actor. They think that just because something is not real, they are incapable of forming an emotional link with them. To me, none of these arguments make any logical sense. Here's why. First of all, I'd like to talk about the much smaller proportion of animation haters, those that believe the visuals are too distracting. Now, I could go on a tangent that not every piece of animated media has bright colours or fast fluid motion, using films such as the mixed animation mockumentary Marcel the Shell with Shoes On as an example. But instead, let's assume that the people that hold this opinion are only talking about the vibrant colour palettes and rapid movement that animated films and shows stereotypically have. To these people, let me ask you a question. Do you find the colours in this shot distracting? No? Then why do you claim the colours in this shot are too bright for you to focus on the plot? Do you hate the fluid, CGI-based fighting in most Marvel films? No? Then why do you dislike the action scenes in The Incredibles? The people that hold this opinion do not actually find bright colours or lots of movement distracting. They're just biased against animated media and use this as an excuse. Their bias is most likely due to the first argument that I mentioned. They view it as childlike. This brings me on to the majority of criticism I see for animated media. It's made for children. Animation is able to tell just as many stories as live-action film. Perhaps even more. To disregard animated media as a vessel for children's entertainment with no ability for deeper meaning or intent is to disregard film as a whole. Other than the appearance and creation process, an animated film is no different to a live-action one. Both have the capacity to follow an unlimited amount of narratives that evoke a whole spectrum of emotions from us. Let's take a look at one of my favourite films, It's Such a Beautiful Day by Don Hertzfeldt. I don't want to spoil this film for any of you, as I believe its principal worth derives from the emotional reaction it causes, the majority of which comes from how the development of the plot has the possibility to link to memories from our collective lives. However, I will say that watching It's Such a Beautiful Day was one of the most heartbreaking experiences I've ever been through. To me, the film perfectly represents feelings of loneliness and emptiness, which, when mixed with the depressing plot following the devolvement of the protagonist's brain due to dementia, created such an emotional sensation that I've never experienced from a film before. This stickman represents grief, loss, and isolation in a way more brilliant than any live-action performance that I've ever witnessed. I know I'm going off on a tangent, mainly because I'll take any excuse to talk about this film, but my point is that animation can hold just as much meaning as live-action media, and it is simply ignorant to believe otherwise. I'm assuming most of you watching this haven't seen It's Such a Beautiful Day, so I'll use a few more examples to get my point across. I want you all to think back to how you felt watching the married life segment of Up, which is, in my opinion, one of the saddest sequences in film history. Watching Carl and Ellie's relationship develop and eventually come to a tragic end is heartbreaking. Did this scene fail to stir up any emotion in you simply because it was animated? Or did it, instead, leave you with a deep sense of sympathy for an old man you met only 11 minutes before the end of the sequence? Did you feel nothing at the end of Big Hero 6 when, spoiler alert, Baymax sacrifices himself for Hero? Now I know right now you might be thinking, Max, you're disproving your own point from earlier by mainly naming films made for children. Just hold on, I'm getting there. Yes, other than It's Such a Beautiful Day, every film I've named so far has been crafted with a young audience in mind. However, that does not mean that they have specifically been made for children. Media can be created in a way which is suitable for children to watch, yet it's not aimed directly at them. Going back to my earlier example of Up, do you think writers Pete Docter, Bob Peterson and Tom McCarthy created the married life sequence for children? They didn't. A large amount of the emotional weight in this scene comes from the viewer linking their personal experiences to what's happening on screen, something that the majority of children cannot do with this specific segment. Yes, many children watching this film will have sadly watched their grandparents, or maybe even parents, age and eventually pass away. But they will not feel as much sympathy or understanding towards Carl, simply because they have not experienced something like this. Of course, I'm not saying at all that children won't understand the scene, or won't feel sorry for Carl, just that the emotional strain put on the viewer is even greater for people that have experienced a similar scenario, people that are typically older. Now, as an adult, if this has not convinced you that animated media can entertain you by forming emotional links, maybe this isn't what you're looking for. Maybe you're the type of person that, when watching something, just wants to have a fun time and not relive old trauma or begin questioning your life. That is absolutely fine. If this is the case, then there's still so much animated content you can enjoy. If you're just looking for something light-hearted and funny, maybe you'll enjoy adult animated shows such as South Park or Family Guy. If you're the type of person that loves action, there's so much brilliant anime like Chainsaw Man and Dragon Ball for you. Just to clarify, I'm not at all saying these shows don't hold any emotional value. The few animes I've watched, which include Naruto and Demon Slayer, had so many incredible emotional moments and arcs. Speaking of anime, there are a whole host of Japanese animated films that are absolutely fantastic. For example, the work of Studio Ghibli, one of my favourite film companies, is consistently fantastic. These films in particular hold so much emotional value that can speak completely differently to children and adults, which makes them so interesting to rewatch as you pick up on themes that you never noticed as a kid. Due to these constant criticisms by ignorant viewers, many animation studios such as Pixar began to strive for the most realistic animation possible, even going as far as to remake their animated films using CGI to make it look more real. And to get money, obviously. This began a trend with almost every studio in Hollywood trying to mimic the Pixar look. Thankfully, this has recently started to change. Here's why. Recently, many Hollywood studios have realised that they should not force their animators to try and closely imitate life. Animation permits so much creative freedom that it is simply a waste to attempt to replicate what can be seen in real life. This realisation has led to many recent animated films shying away from realism, a trend that I am hugely in support of. The most famous example of stylised animation in recent years is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, a film that has been loved and non-stop discussed in the 5 years since its release. Spider-Verse is a fantastic feat of filmmaking, primarily due to its incredible visuals. I'm not going to go too in-depth into why the animation of Into the Spider-Verse is so unique. There are already tons of brilliant videos on YouTube that delve deep into that subject, including those by Vox and Wired. What I will say is that, in terms of both art style and frame rate, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse completely bucked all trends of modern animation to create something wholly original, something that set a new standard. The effect of this film can be clearly seen in recent projects such as Intergalactic, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. Whether these films were inspired by the unrealistic appearance of Spider-Verse or its incredible movements, it is easy to see that these three films in particular were influenced hugely by it. Overall, I believe that the general public, Hollywood, critics and award shows all need to give animation as a medium the respect it deserves. There is so much potential for high quality storytelling with animated films. It's been proven so many times. If you clicked on this video as someone that disliked animated media, I hope I've achieved my goal of changing your mind. Thank you.